Hi, I'm Mark Miklich, Technical Product Manager for Small Character Technologies here at Squid Ink. In today's training video, we are going to discuss mounting options for our laser systems. All right, when we're discussing mounting options for our lasers, we're going to be working with our standard laser stand. We'll put the part number in the bottom of the video here so you guys can take note of that. So everything we do today in this video is going to be using our stand. There's a lot of different ways you can use this, a lot of different mounting positions available. So what we're going to be working with for most of the video is a 30-watt laser, so you can actually see how the power supply and interface can mount to the stand, and also the marking head. We will also cut to our 10-watt laser and 50-watt fiber laser, so you can kind of see the differences between those three primary systems and how they would mount to the stand. Okay, so we've briefly discussed the stand. Now naturally we need a laser to put on the stand. So what we've got here is one of our 30-watt CO2 systems. We've got the marking head and the tube, and we've got our power supply and display or interface, okay? You'll notice that these are connected by an umbilical. This is power from the power supply to the laser. And then we also have a toolkit. Toolkit comes with every laser system, doesn't matter if it's a fiber laser, 10-watt CO2, or one of our 30-watt CO2 variants. Every single system comes with one of these. This is what we really need to get started, mounting our laser to the stand. So we've got our system, and then in the toolkit, we're gonna have some mounting hardware, and we've actually got some tools in here too to help us get the system set up on the stand. Okay, so one of the first things we're gonna do with our laser, since we have a 30-watt laser, or this could be a 50-watt fiber laser as well, we've got the power supply here and the display that are gonna mount up to the stand. So we're gonna use this plate for that power supply to mount to. Now one thing you'll notice is we've already got all the hardware, the plates, the upright, everything's already assembled. If you're curious as to how to get the stand assembled first, please view our laser stand assembly video. That'll show you how to get set up the way we have it right now. Okay, so if we want to position this mounting plate and also get the hardware that we're going to use, or the bolts that we're going to use to mount the power supply to this plate, we can go in our toolkit. We can locate the bolts necessary to do that, and also there is an Allen wrench set in here that will allow us to loosen up the bolts that hold this plate in position. So you'll see these bolts go into 4 sliding T-nuts. We can loosen this up, move the plate up and down, and kind of get in a position where we think is close to where we want that power supply and display to sit. So we'll look in our toolkit, and we'll show you what we're aiming for here. You're going to find a bag of hardware, and there's also a set of keys in here. We're going to ultimately set the keys aside for now. What we really want are the bolts that are in this bag, and more specifically, we're looking for these M3 bolts. These are what are going to mount our power supply to that plate. So we've got our hardware, and then again we do have a set of Allen wrenches in the toolkit as well. So this will let us use that mounting hardware and also loosen up that plate so we can get it in position. Okay, and when we're talking about loosening up the bolts and T-nuts for this plate to slide, we're talking about these 4 bolts right here. So if we loosen these up, again, you don't want to remove them. You don't want to back them out all the way, because then those T-nuts will just slide right down the assembly. We just need to loosen them up, and then this will slide up and down. And then we'll also show you on the power supply and display module itself, how this is going to kind of match up, so you can get an idea of where that display is going to sit relative to this plate. Okay, so we've got our mounting plate, roughly where we want it. One thing I'll point out right away is you want to make sure when you get this positioned where you want it, you really want to snug these bolts up tightly. Okay, this is going to support or help support our power supply. Okay, so make sure this is nice and tight, and try to get as level as possible. So now that this is in place, we're ready to put our power supply and display and mount it to the plate. Okay, so you'll see I've moved the laser over. It's just sitting on the base of our stand. We've just got the power supply here and the tube and the marking head here. Again, just be mindful that we do have that power umbilical connecting the two. When you move this around, just be aware of that. So what we're gonna do right now is just get the power supply mounted to the plate. So you're gonna see there's a pattern of 6 holes here on the plate. We're gonna line up with the back of our power supply. This is usually a 2-person job. It is possible to do it by yourself, but this is fairly heavy and you've got to kind of keep it balanced and in position to line up the first few bolts. So just be aware of that. You might need a helping hand to get this lined up initially. Okay, so a couple quick pointers here before we do this. One is I'm going to lock our casters in place. One nice thing with the stand is you've got 4 locking casters. So we're going to get those locked in. That way we're not fighting the stand rolling around on us while we get the power supply set up. We're going to want to be ready with our 6 bolts that'll mount the power supply to the plate, and then we've got our matching Allen wrench to do that. So now we're ready to get this mounted up. Okay, so we've got our 6 bolts in and they're nice and snug. You'll see we've got the display, at a level that we like. Now we do have one extra piece of support for this. Now that we've kind of got the plate situated and the power supply where we want it, you'll see down towards the bottom of our post on the stand, we've got this little support plate. We're going to loosen up the 2 bolts that it has, and we can slide this up right underneath the base of the power supply and tighten those back up. And that'll just be some Okay, so now that we've got our power supply and display where we want it, we're going to get our laser tube marking head situated on the stand as well. So that is actually going to mount to this plate right here. And what you'll see when we lift up our marking head and tube is there will be sliding mounts underneath that will match up with the holes on our plate here. One thing to be mindful of when you do this, when you get the marking head up on this plate, make sure it's secure. You'll see further along in the video that this actually does have the ability to pivot. So if we're just getting mounted up to begin with, we want to make sure this is nice and secure, right? We don't want it tipping on us when we're trying to mount the marking head. So what we're going to do first is just get this situated for a top-down application or a down-shooting application. What I mean by that is we're just going to get the tube and the marking head mounted flat on this plate, and you'll see our marking head and our main focusing lens, which is right down here, is just pointing straight down, okay? So we're just gonna start off with a real basic down shooting setup. So again, we're just gonna get that mounted now to this plate. All we need to do that is in our bag of hardware from the toolkit, we've got 4 large M6 bolts and accompanying Allen wrench that we're going to use. We're going to send those bolts up through the bottom of this plate into our marking head and laser tube assembly here. Okay, so we've got our 4 bolts through this plate and into our tube and marking head assembly. Now I've left them a little bit loose, and the reason being is you'll see we can actually slide the system around to where we need it, and then we'll lock them in place. So, when we're sliding this to get it in position, we're going to start looking at how this is set up relative to our production line and our product. So we'll get a conveyor over here and a piece of material that we might mark on, and we can start positioning this, and you'll see other adjustments we have with the stand to get the laser, and more importantly, the marking head in the correct spot. Okay, so we've got the system rolled up to a conveyor here, and we do have a product in place that we would be marking from the top down on. So we're still just kind of working on positioning the system. Now I haven't yet tightened the bolts that are holding the tube and the marking head to this plate. So, typically we're gonna want the system, or most customers will want the system, as close to the line as possible so it's not taking up a lot of space. So we can still slide our tube and marking head assembly back, and that way we can roll the system forward a little bit more. So we can go ahead and tighten up the bolts underneath the plate here, and then you'll see we do have an up, down, and in-out adjustment with the stand as well to better position the system relative to the product. Okay, so again, with the application we're working on here, we're gonna be shooting from the top down on top of our product. So one thing we're gonna wanna do is get the marking head and tube raised up a little bit first so we can actually get out over the product. One thing to be mindful of is with any laser is the focal distance. So from your focusing lens to the product, it's gonna be a very specific distance. Our standard 30-watt CO2 systems, for example, the focal distance from lens to product is about 13 centimeters or about 5¼ inches. So you're gonna wanna make sure you'll be able to have that much space, again, from our lens to the product. So again, we're gonna raise this whole assembly up to get it out over our material here. Okay, so to raise the laser up, all we have to do is adjust this knob or crank right here. So if we crank this clockwise, the system will go up, and naturally counterclockwise it would go down. So we're just gonna raise this up. It's real straightforward. Again, we're gonna get out above our product here. Okay, so we do have some room now to roll the system forward. So again, kind of sliding the entire tube marking head assembly back gives us the ability to get this much closer to our production line, so we can really get it right up against our conveyor. And then if we go a little bit too far, we do have an adjustment, in and out adjustment here. So this gives us a really easy and convenient way to move the system in and out. And again, what we're ultimately looking for is we're gonna try to get this focusing lens and our marking head positioned right out over our product. And right now we're just trying to get in the ballpark so we can get our laser set up. Okay, so earlier in the video, I did mention, we have to be mindful of the focusing distance from lens to product. Some of you might be wondering, do I have to physically measure the distance from my lens to my material or product? You do not have to. This system does have a focusing option. It comes standard with all of our lasers. That's in the programming. When we actually turn the system on and we're getting ready to mark, we can really dial in that focal distance, okay? So for now, again, we're just kind of getting in the ballpark. When we actually get to message setup, creation, aiming, focusing, that's when you really get it dialed in with that focusing feature. We're not covering that in this video. Again, this is just physical setup options. So you'll want to watch our training video on message creation and aiming and focusing the system. Okay, so we've really covered just a basic down shooting setup or application, just how to get the system mounted in the ballpark of where we need it to be. Now, naturally, there are gonna be a lot of applications where we need to hit the product on the side, for example. So now we'll look at ways that we can adjust, our mounting position in our stand so we can mark our product on the side. Okay, so if we wanna mark in this scenario, the face of our product or the side of the product, depending on how it's being fed through, naturally we need to get our focusing lens pointing out towards the side of our material or product. So we're gonna have to reposition the marking head and tube so that the lens is pointing out instead of straight down. So there are a lot of different ways we can do that. One is we can just pivot the plate that the entire marking head and tube are sitting on. So in order to do that, we've just got two locking bolts here. If we loosen these up, we'll be able to pivot this entire assembly. Now you want to be mindful of when you start to loosen these, there's a bit of weight here from our tube and marking head assembly. So it's going to be ready to swing depending on how you have this set up. So you'll want to have some support. You'll want to be ready for that. We can loosen these up, and what will happen is the entire tube and marking head will pivot, and that'll give us the ability to have our focusing lens pointing straight out. Okay, so now you'll see we can actually swing the entire system down. Okay, and then we'd have to tighten up those 2 bolts to lock this in position. Now, one thing you might want to do, especially when we're doing this, is have a small level with you. We're going to want the marking head as level as possible. So when we're tightening those up, again, make sure that this is nice and flat and level. Okay, so we've got our focusing lens pointing straight out so we can hit the side of a product. Now, again, we're still dealing with the same focal distance. So with our standard system, we've got about 5 1/4 inches from our lens to our product. So in this scenario, if we're set up this way, naturally we're gonna need to have that distance correct. So if your production line just won't facilitate this setup, this horizontal setup, there are, again, more ways we can do this, but this is just one option as far as having our focusing lens, shooting on the side of our product. So we still have the same in and out adjustments. We still have the same up and down adjustment. This is just one quick, easy way to reposition the system. We'll look at another option for this. We can actually completely flip the entire assembly upside down. So our marking head would be down here. And if this just doesn't work with your production line, if we can't get it close enough, or maybe you just want the laser tube and marking head body parallel with your conveyor instead of kind of perpendicular like this, we can also mount it on this plate in that orientation. We do have the ability to turn the head. So we'll look at all those different scenarios yet, but just keep in mind this is one quick, easy way to have a horizontal setup to mark on the side of your product. Okay, so we're gonna swing our plate down the opposite way before we remount our laser. The reason we're gonna do that is we can have the system, you'll see we have 2 different ways we can send the bolts through. So if we do need to have the laser in a horizontal position, but closer to our conveyor, if there just wasn't enough space for us to get closer with our previous positioning for a horizontal application, I'll kind of show you how we can get this plate positioned and the laser set up so we can get a little bit closer. Okay, so this is another possible mounting position. So all we really did was flip the laser tube and marking head upside down. So now our marking head's way down here. We have seen some applications where we need to get really close to the floor. So that is a possibility, and we still have a lot of room in which we can not only slide the tube down, so we can still loosen up the bolts with this plate, slide it down, and we still have some vertical adjustment here too. So if for some reason you need to get really low, we do have the capability of doing that. Now, one other thing we did here is we swung that mounting plate over to the other side. So we just loosened up those pivot screws. We moved the plate over. So now you'll see we can get much closer to the line. Another thing we can do is actually remove this little block right here. This is actually just for mounting sensors. A lot of times I'll remove it anyway if we've got the photocell in a different position or place. So we can actually take this off, and then all we have is really this plate in between our system and the production line. So again, if we've got that 5 1/4 inch focusing or focal distance, right, we need to get within 5 1/4 inches of our product. This will give us some more flexibility. So our previous horizontal mounting position, we had the plate on the other side. there's a little bit more hardware in between us and the production line. So we've kind of gotten that out of the way. Now we just, again, have this plate in between us and our line. Okay, so again, you can see with the way we've got it positioned now, with that plate on the front side of this pivot, we can get really, really close to a production line. And again, you know, we've got our marking head way down low here for those of you who do have product feeds that are really close to the ground. So we could have had this plate in this same position for our previous setup. So again, when we just had the marking head up here, okay, you can do this. And again, that just allows you to get a little bit closer to your production line if it calls for it. So this is just one more option for a horizontal or side shooting application. Okay, so another option we have for side shooting applications is we can have our laser tube and marking head assembly parallel to our production line, and then we can actually pivot our marking head so that our lens is still pointing straight out. So the first thing we want to do in that scenario is we're going to want to reposition our mounting plate. So all I'm going to do is unbolt it from our pivot block here. I'm going to spin it out and then remount it. And what that'll do is the plate will kind of stick out further, give us some more flexibility with our in and out adjustments. And with that in and out adjustment, we can then move the system as it's parallel to our production line. If we mounted the laser right now with the plate as it sits, again, we won't have as much flexibility since we've got our power supply right here. So we're just going to swing it out. Okay, so you'll see now we've got the system mounted. So the tube and marking head assembly runs parallel with our production line. Now, usually, again, if we're mounting it in this fashion, it is going to be for a side shooting application. So we still need to get our focusing lens pointing out towards the side of our product. So the last thing we need to do here before we really kind of get everything dialed in from a positioning perspective is we need to pivot the head. So there's a couple things we need to do in order to achieve that. The first thing we're going to do is actually just loosen up this collar right here. We're going to need a little bit of extra length for the power cord that's going out to our galvos and our marking head. So we're going to loosen this up. We're going to need to fish out a little bit more, again, a power cable here, so we have that flexibility to rotate this assembly. Okay, in order to loosen this, we do need a wrench, or a crescent wrench is fine. And again, we're just gonna unthread this locking collar here. So we're gonna go counterclockwise, loosen this up. That way, that's the start of us being able to feed some extra power cable out here. So again, we're just loosening this up right now. Okay, so we've got that collar loosened up. Now, usually there should be enough free moving power cable to just kind of slide out. Again, we just need a little bit more to have flexibility to rotate our head. Now, if you have any resistance here, if it's not feeding out easily, we are going to want to actually take off our top cover here and just make sure that this isn't getting caught on anything. Or, you know, we do have a zip tie in here. We want to make sure that that's not grabbing a hold of anything as we try to feed this out. So again, oftentimes you'll be able just to slide some extra cable out. If you can't, we'll show you how to open this up really quick and review where this is coming from, just to make sure, you know, worst case scenario, we're not grabbing onto anything. Okay, so first thing we're going to do on the top cover is we're going to remove 4 bolts. So you'll see there's 2 on each end, can't miss them. So we're going to completely remove these, and after that, what we need to do on each side of our system at the top, there's going to be a series of bolts that also hold this cover in place. So we're going to need to go down and remove 5 from each side, okay? Okay, so once we've got that hardware removed, this plate will just lift right off. There are no connections or anything you need to worry about here, so we can set that aside. So now you'll see where we're getting this cable from. So we do have a bit of excess length in here, and again, we don't need much, maybe an inch or two at most. Okay, so you can see that coming out. So that's all we're doing is we're fishing out some extra power cable so we have that flexibility. One thing I'll point out really quickly here too is, again, with our 30-watt systems, we don't have any connections from the plate to our tube and marking head assembly. With our 10-watt lasers, the display you'll see is actually built into this cover. So if you're doing this with a 10-watt laser, again, the footprint's very similar. We'll actually get a shot of, just a 10-watt laser in general set up on the stand. So, from a mounting perspective, everything's the same, but this cover there is a difference. Since the display on the 10-watt is located here, you're going to have some wires and cables connecting into this assembly. So just be mindful of that if you need to pivot the head, if you need to fish out more power cable. When you lift this up on a 10-watt system, you're not going to have as much flexibility naturally. You can't just set this aside. So just be aware of that. That's really the main difference. So with the 10-watt, you would just kind of lift this up, do the same thing we just did, but just be mindful of those connections. All right, so we've got our additional power cable pulled out here. I'm going to leave this loose for now. That locking collar is going to stay loose until after I pivot the head, and then we'll snug that back up. So the last step we need to take here in order to be able to pivot the head is we do have a collar right here. This is a locking collar. You'll see we have 4 bolts that hold it in place. When we loosen these up, we loosen that collar up, it'll give us the ability to pivot this entire assembly. So you'll see the marking head sits on this shaft. That shaft and assembly will actually be able to turn once this collar is loose. So I'm going to go around and just loosen each of these bolts. You do not need to remove them, just loosen them. That will give us the ability to turn the head. Okay, once you've got the head turned, this is another good time to make sure this is level. So if you do have a little level, just make sure the marking head is nice and level. And then once we've got that in the position we want, so again, our focusing lens is pointing straight out, we're gonna go ahead and lock that collar back in place. Okay, last thing we need to do, once we've got our collar locked in place, our marking head positioned where we need it, we're just going to go ahead and put this little locking collar back on for our power cable. Again, you guys can see why we needed a little bit extra, maybe about an inch, a little more, just to give us flexibility to turn this. So we're going to lock this back in place, and then we're set. So you'll see again, we've got our system mounted parallel to our production line now, and we're shooting from the side. We still have our in and out adjustments, okay? So it's really easy to move the system, closer or further away from our production line. We still have the up-down adjustments too, okay? Okay, one thing you will notice when I set the system up this way is I do have the marking head on this end. Yes, you could also have it over here as well. If you can, if the application will allow it, I keep it on this end just because it's further away from the operator. Okay, so you're marking over here instead of right here next to the operator. Just a small safety thing, not a huge concern, but it is nice just to have the system a little bit further away from the person operating the display here. Okay, so another orientation that we can have the laser in, or more specifically our marking head and focusing lens, is we can shoot from the bottom up. Okay, so if we need to mark on the bottom of products, that is definitely a possibility. So in order to do that, you'll notice all I did was basically take our tube and marking head assembly and put it underneath our mounting plate here. So, you know, here's kind of the bottom of the system where our sliding mounting rails are. And we've just got the lens pointing straight up. So we just send the bolts through into those sliding plates. We can mount it just like this, and you can shoot straight up on the bottom of product. Now, naturally, if we're marking straight up like this, there are, you know, maybe some safety precautions we would take as well. That'll be discussed when we're in our training video on our safety interlock and other safety features of the system. Okay, so we've really discussed a lot of the primary mounting options available with the stand. One other thing I do want to show you guys is each system comes with an alarm beacon, and this is something we can also mount to the stand. I personally will usually mount it right up here in the top corner. Okay, that's kind of at its highest point, gives us the most visibility. So the system will come with hardware in your toolkit for the beacon. So we've just got a pair of bolts here, and again, sliding T-nuts. So what we're gonna do is get these inside the upright of our stand. Easiest way to do this is actually pre-assemble these. So put these together in your beacon, and then what we'll actually do is just take the top cap off of our stand. We can slide this right in, tighten it down, put the cap back on, and we're done. It's a lot easier than trying to get these into the assembly without having them, you know, slide down behind your power supply. So put this together first, take the cap off, and we'll slide this in place. So what we're gonna do to get this cap off is first we're gonna take our vertical adjustment handle off. So there's just one bolt that holds this in place. We'll take this off or slide it off. We're gonna take these 4 bolts out of the top, and this will just come right off. Okay, that'll allow us to slide the beacon in place, and then we'll just put this back together. Okay, so far in the video, we've really only been working with a 30-watt CO2 laser. I'm just gonna show you the difference between a 30-watt and a 10-watt CO2 laser, for example. So this is a 10-watt laser. You'll see we've got no external power supply or display. It's built into the system. Outside of that, the mounting principles are basically the same. So it's the exact same stand. We can mount this in any position that we did with a 30-watt. We can pivot the head the same way we did with the 30-watt. Really the only difference is no external power supply again. The display is built into the system. And then with the 10 watts, you'll see we just have different mounting hole positions. We don't have those sliding rails. There's still enough mounting holes here to give us a lot of flexibility. And again, this mounts up to that plate with the exact same hardware Everything else we did today is exactly the same with this system as far as capabilities are concerned. Okay, the other system we could be mounting to this exact same stand is our 50-watt fiber laser. And basically it's the exact same thing, just a slightly different footprint. It does have the external power supply and display, so that would mount the exact same way, same process we did at the beginning of the video. And the marking head, it's a smaller footprint, but it still mounts to this plate the same way, okay? So very similar to what we did here with our 30-watt CO2 system. All right, that wraps up our video on mounting our laser systems to our laser stand. If you want to see more videos on this product or any of our other products, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't hesitate to head over to squidinc.com to get even more information on our entire product line. Thank you.